Welcome aboard. You have found the Brain Software Podcast emanating from the hypnotic world epicenter, Toronto, Canada. This is episode 253. I'm Chris Thompson. Today, NLP and hypnosis trainer Mike Mandel and I are going to answer another round of hypnosis questions. So hang in there and stick around.
Disclaimer. This is a wonderful disclaimer aimed at the naysayers who want us to stop saying Lucci. But here's my answer to all of them. Can you really stop us? Can you stop us at all?
Hey, everybody. It's great to be here now that my dad's safely locked away in San Quentin prison, and I'm the brand new wizard on the block who's got his power at last. Isn't it great to have that old tranquility back that we had before federal undercover agent Spunkalucio arrested my dad for a variety of serious financial offenses?
We are not witches!
So let's welcome to the little white balloon factory, the human transducer, the electric flag of simple glanation, and the Keith Richards of hypnosis, Mike Mandel.
Yes, Christopher. I'm loving this Keith Richard thing. And again, Keith, we know you watch this. We know you listen. Come on our show, buddy. We need you. Yeah. We need you, Keith. You're the best.
All right. Now, before we get going, we're going to answer a whole bunch.
We are going.
Before we get going into the main, the main event, the Q&A, we're going to answer a lot of fun hypnosis questions here, give you some good value. I just want to laugh, though. I haven't told you this yet.
Okay. Uh-oh.
So I was sitting with my wife and my daughter. So in this house, I only have one daughter that actually lives here full time because the other one's off in university.
That sounds like a problem.
And so we're sitting there, three of us and the dog, and the topic comes up of our podcast.
Oh, really?
And occasionally, of course, clips get pulled out of it and they end up on TikTok. And sometimes they'll go viral. And we'll get, I think that last one for self-defense, that clip where you gave advice.
Oh, the women's self-defense. Yeah, safety.
We get something like 1.9 million views on this thing. So it started to show up. My daughter's friends are reporting that they're seeing our podcast and stuff everywhere, and some people are watching it. So apparently, we're quite famous.
It's wonderful for a man of my advanced age.
Anyway, it's really irritating to my daughter, and it's really hilarious.
It's irritating to her? Why is it irritating?
I don't know, because we're weird.
She doesn't want her dad to be cool.
She thinks, yeah, exactly. In her mind, I'm the weird dad. So there you go.
There is that.
But I just had to say that. That's funny. So
that's good, Chris.
If any of our friends are watching, we appreciate you watching.
What's our topic today?
So Q&A, but let's do our
continuing Q&A.
Let's do our think tank words.
Well, we just wanted to say what they wanted to say. Are there any promotional items here?
Oh my goodness, do we have anything to promote? I suppose so. Well,
we do promote this.
We do have Foundations Live coming up in July.
Yes.
Which is 8 weeks of awesome training with us and Timothy September.
Yeah.
On Zoom. It's a small group of people. We once a week, we meet for 2 hours and we go through a series of building blocks to get you from knowing nothing about hypnosis to having really good, solid foundational principles of conversational hypnosis and direct style hypnosis so that you can get actual confidence doing actual hypnosis without scripts, principle-based, and you can help a lot of people with everyday problems at the end of 8 weeks. It's really awesome.
People are loving it.
You can check it out. We'll...
One more announcement. This month...
I was about to give a URL.
Well, no, go ahead. I won't interrupt the URL. We'll edit that out.
It's way too complicated. We've got to make an easier URL, but it's MikeMandelHypnosis.com/foundations-live. You can also just find it from the events page. If you go to MikeMandelHypnosis.com, you click on the events link, and you'll see it. It'll be easy.
You see? I just want to point out, it's my 71st birthday on April 29th.
Yes.
And so many of you have written to me, said, Uncle Mike, I'd love to send you a really good bottle of whiskey. How can I do that? Well, that's fine. Just, send it by courier or by the mail to our post office box on our website. And I will thank you just as I'm thanking me.
It's not a post office box. It's a mailbox.
Not interesting.
But it's not a post office box.
Oh, whatever.
That always reads fake.
Oh, yeah, it does, doesn't it? Now, listen, let's talk about the think tank words for today, because we're doing an all Q&A on hypnosis and related fields. We're following up, so we get a lot of good questions. These have all come in.
Did these actually come from did these three words that I'm looking at that you're about to discover?
They all came from
The think tank?
The think tank, yeah. Sababuka checks. I couldn't believe it.
Funny.
So I will read them and then we'll start to unpack them. First one, electrocution. Second one, amulet. And third, tyranny.
Ooh.
Tyranny.
Tyranny.
I'm going to say it one more time. Tyranny. Chris, let's unpack these.
Electrocution. I think that's what killed Dracula.
You're going to Dracula. Can't go to Dracula yet. Dracula is not vulnerable
Last
to electricity.
episode,
He's
we
not.
did the Dracula game.
He can control lightning
so
and
if you
stuff.
haven't watched the last episode,
It's not even
or
interesting.
listened, 252, I guess it would have been, because that's one fewer than 253. The Dracula game is really fun. Anyway, electrocution. Okay, I think about. Well, think of it like an overdose. It's an overdose of electrons in this case,
Right, with
that
high
causes
amperage.
a bit of a problem known as death. Not a good thing.
Okay.
So, well, depending on who, I suppose.
Well, you can go death, electrocution to death to Dracula right away.
Right.
What
So-
about amulet?
Okay, amulet. Well, if you had an amulet to protect you against electrocution, that could be useful. Amulet, I don't even know what... I think of amulet as something magical, something that people don't necessarily understand, but it has a powerful effect.
I'm wearing one right now.
Yeah,
This
there
is
you
an
go.
amulet.
You
Now,
could-
interestingly,
you can think of
amulets-
hypnosis as an amulet.
No, you can't. Amulets and talismans are sometimes mistaken for each other. An amulet has a protective aspect, where a talisman is something that has an active aspect.
Oh, there we go. So I was actually thinking of talisman.
Yeah, an amulet would protect you.
Protect it,
So you could wear like a silver cross to protect you from Dracula.
Protect you from electrocution.
And from Dracula.
All right. So
okay, what
amulet's
about
something that
tyranny?
protects you. Tyranny. Well, you would want an amulet to protect you from tyranny.
Okay, well, tyranny
Yeah.
in all through, I guess it was early Moldavia, Transylvania, Vlad the Impaler was a tyrant, and he used to impale people on stakes so they could die slowly while he was having lunch outdoors.
Are you serious?
Yes, and he
This is
was
true.
He's serious.
History lesson.
Vlad the Impaler, yeah, Google him, and he was the original Dracula. He was the Dracul.
Amazing how this all comes back to Dracula.
Dracula, yes. Okay, here's
I think
the
we should stop teaching hypnosis and start teaching.
vampirism, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd be a
So,
good.
but what is the
gotta
definition of tyranny?
I have the best vampire hunter uniform now. I really do. I have
The cape.
a black fedora from the 40s from Italy, and I wear it with a black Inverness Sherlock Holmes style cape out in the rain and carry a wolf head cane, and I look like a freaking vampire hunter.
Maybe you
It's
could take
awesome.
that photo.
Hi, I'm
send
5
it
years
to
old. I look
Ross,
like a
so
vampire
when he's
hunter.
editing this podcast, that can go in B-roll.
We'll do it.
Oh, that would be awesome.
We do it because
And if
we
he
care about
actually
you.
Does it? Then you'll have already seen it and
Yeah.
not be curious anymore and wonder why I'm talking about this after the fact.
Right.
Okay.
Let's get into our content.
All right.
Question one. I'm going to throw the question out. I'll throw the first one out. You're going to answer. Then I'll add to it. Then you throw the second one out. And we'll continue as long as we can because lunch
is
beckons us.
beckoning. All
Okay.
right.
So, Chris, question one, actual question. How can the principles of mesmerism be seen in modern hypnosis practices, and what has changed since its inception?
This
What a
is
great
kind of fun,
question.
because I have not seen any of these questions.
Right.
You planned them, and I'm only seeing them.
Yes.
for some. Okay, so we think back to Franz Anton Mesmer.
Late 1700s.
And the original mesmerism, the idea that he got in his own mind fooled into thinking he had these magnetic powers.
Animal
because
magnetism, yeah.
Back in the day, they used to open up the vein
Yes,
and, take a
and
pint of
bleed you,
blood
yes,
because they
yes.
thought you had too much
Blood to Dracula. Right away.
They thought you had too much blood.
Yeah.
And in fact, George Washington died
Of bloodletting.
from bloodletting.
Yeah.
Because they thought it would. Anyway.
Okay.
And
That's the history of
didn't
hypnosis.
have the
What about
magnets.
mesmerism?
He
No,
used
you're telling me the
something
history of
fake.
mesmerism.
All
We
right.
want to know about the principles of mesmerism. That's why
Yes.
you need me to keep you on track, just as I need you to
Oh,
keep
it's
me on
'cause
track.
You're hungry, aren't you?
I'm starving.
Yeah.
The principles
All
of
right.
mesmerism. So the magnetic passes and so on.
So it created this focused attention, right?
Right.
The person experiencing the mesmerism would know it's happening, otherwise it wouldn't work.
But there is that.
I'm mesmerizing you but you don't see me and you don't know I'm doing it, so it's
Right.
not working. The reason it would work is because you would be fixated as the
there's
subject
anticipation.
on what's going on. Yes, your anticipation would create a fixation of attention. And if there was a context that this is expected to do this thing to you,
Yeah.
then you would manufacture that happening.
Right. In other words, it's indirectly hypnotic. I would go further and say, or maybe chunk up even higher. The only thing I think mesmerism still has relevance, and I know there's people doing mesmerism now, which to me is like, it's not convinced me. Anyway, the bottom line is what he did give us was the power of prestige, as did Edward the Confessor in 1000 AD. The idea that his prestige, because he was Anton effing Mesmer,
Yeah.
right? So people would see him with his turban and his robes and his wand and the glass harmonica and the bloody harmonica to Dracula and all of this stuff. And because he was Mesmer, people would go into trances right away. Prestige still works. And to me, that's the really the only relevance today of anything he did.
Thank you. That's better than focused attention. Focused attention is the principle that made it work. Prestige is like an amplifier.
Right. Very much so.
Mind,
or an initiator, like a neutron stream inside a fusion bomb.
Yeah, that's very much. There you go.
There's
That's a good way of thinking about it.
It is very good.
Which you would need an amulet to protect you against.
Very much.
There you go. I had to scroll back up to the words to use them.
Okay.
The idea, so you've got your focused attention. You've got the idea that prestige, and this is not just in the context of hypnosis, but really in anything, any marketing, any sales, any presentation skills, any influential presentation of any kind. If you have prestige, which we have because people subscribe to this podcast, Mike.
I'm like Mandel.
We're at work right now. I just want to disclose that.
Yeah.
If you have prestige, you'll get better results.
That's good.
And if you don't, right?
You'll get worse results. So what about question 2? Read me this one.
All right.
We'll alternate. I'm not prepped either.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about how do ideomotor responses provide insight into an individual's unconscious mind, and how are they utilized in therapy?
Great question.
It's actually kind of an interesting one.
Very
Before
interesting.
I pass it to you, I've been reading the collected papers of Milton H. Erickson, Timothy, September, not the collected works, but the collected papers.
And not the collected works of Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula.
And I was reading about ideomotor signals and an interesting way that he used them. He convinced, essentially short version is a woman who was very, very against believing in hypnosis. This is your fad thing.
Yeah.
So she was agreeing that if she could be convinced it was real, then she would be a demo subject. She would volunteer her time. And so he had her producing ideomotor signals under the context of that's not really hypnosis because you could produce them consciously.
Right. So
and fooled her essentially into being hypnotized. Anyway, what's ideomotor
Right. Well,
signals?
ideomotor, it comes from the larger field of ideodynamics. So ideomotor, idiosensory, both come under ideodynamics. The idea with ideomotor is idea produces motion. And so we see this all the time. And my mom never drove a day in her life, God rest her soul, but she would sit in the passenger seat. And as my dad would be on the highway and other cars are coming and merging, she'd be slamming on the brakes, like in the passenger seat. There's no brake there.
Yeah, which is her responding to an emotion or something going on in her brain
or external stimulus.
That's becoming a motion, right?
Now, another case of ideomotor, there's a great video, and it's AC/DC Live in Plaza del Toro in Madrid. And Angus Young is there. He's behind the wall, and there's a wrecking ball that's going to hit this brick wall and knock it down. This is how the show opens. And I sat there watching this thing, the amplitude gradually increasing. The audience is watching, because when it hits the wall collapses. Angus comes out, the psychotic schoolboy, hits a chord, bows, and just goes right into the show. And I found myself, as I was watching this thing swing, I was like this in my chair, swaying, willing it to move. It's almost impossible not to do that under certain circumstances. So that's ideomotor. Your unconscious is producing emotion. We use this intentionally in hypnosis by setting up ideomotor signals, yes and no signals. The Swan Bob Burns came up with all these different methods, give us a direct line to the unconscious, the deep mind, and we can get answers from the unconscious. It creates a phenomenal shortcut to getting to the unconscious, because we do not need somnambulistic trances in order to make ideomotor work. We can do it in light trances or even no trance at all, like with an NLP 6-step reframe. It's a useful tool that belongs in every hypnotist toolbox.
While we're talking about this,
and we are,
would you say that this qualifies as
something in my eye?
Did you just whack your?
No, I was trying
the microphone?
trying to push
you just stabbed yourself.
No,
in the eye
just
with a
rubbing
microphone.
it richly on the pads here. I think I got it. Yeah.
Okay, so here's the question.
All right.
Well, obviously, all of us have found ourselves doing this at one point or another in life, and you're wondering what I'm talking about. I'm talking about music.
Not the sort of thing you do autonomically.
How often have you found yourself, let's say, in an environment where a good song comes on, and you start, either the head bopping or the
beat or bopping,
the foot tapping.
Yeah.
You hear a good drum beat or guitar rhythm or something, and people start bouncing their heel up and down. They're not consciously deciding to do this. They unconsciously, they hear the music, they get the idea that
just
this is
wires
great,
into them, yeah.
and we move our body in this rhythmic way that's like in beat with the music. That's ideomotor as well.
I guess it is.
I think it is. Now, here's the other part of the question.
Or is it audiomotor?
anything that assumes trance causes trance. Thank you, Clark Hull.
1933. Hypnosis and Suggestibility.
So if the idea puts us into a bit of a trance, let's call it a trance, and we start responding by, bopping up and down to the music, we're in a trance. Would you agree?
I'm in one now listening to you talk about it. Yes.
So the other way around, we can sneak into trance backwards by setting it up, right? I know it's done. Does that make sense, though? That the idea here is anything that assumes trance causes trance.
Sure, so we've got the response.
If being fixated in your attention on, let's say, music causes you to bounce up and down and enjoy the music, well, similarly, setting up an idiomotor response with somebody would amplify the hypnotic result.
Yes, I would think so as well. And and the thing is, when you hear music, when somebody blasts music in their car or somewhere, and I don't want to listen to it, why is it never good music? It's always a song that sucks.
Yeah,
always.
There you go.
Okay, so let's go to this one. Can you discuss the application of nested loop metaphors in storytelling and its impact on therapeutic outcomes? This is phenomenal.
Well,
these are good questions.
This is interesting. Okay, I'm glad you came up with these. So nested, first of all, nested loop metaphors or stories within stories within stories. It's like Leonardo DiCaprio in Inception.
Yeah, pretty much.
Inside of a dream, which is really cool. And I told you a story, which I will not be telling in this podcast, of me having a dream.
Oh, that was the best.
Then waking up from the dream where something horrendous had happened.
And thinking it had.
And I checked, it actually happened, and then realizing that in itself was still a dream.
Chris,
so
this is a dream. Would I do this if it wasn't a dream? You're dreaming. You're dreaming. Can I tell the story?
No, you can't. No, it's
I just want to hear him say no.
It's so horrible.
It is hilarious.
It's so horrible.
We'll do it in our final podcast. Final one where we pull out all the stops.
When we fire ourselves and get ourselves canceled,
man, yeah.
Then we'll tell the actual
Okay, so
story.
let nested loops, as he said, are stories within stories within stories. The power of a nested loop metaphor, and I think the longest one I ever did was 13 loops inside each other.
Yeah.
Without notes. If I was a younger man then, I could still do it. Not that I will, but I could.
Anyone can learn this.
Yes, anyone can learn this. So you start a story, you get most of the way through, 51%. I like to go about 80% through, and segue smoothly into a second story without pointing out that you've gone to another story, and then into a third. Now, 3 will do it. 5 is even better. You get to the bottom, you got a story within a story within a story. We start to miss the referential index as to who's talking about what.
Right.
It's called stacking realities in NLP, which takes us to the bottom. And now you look at the person, they've gone into trance purely by following the layers of stories that requires a degree of attention, and the complexity lulls them into a trance. This is an actual induction that is told to induce trance. You never say it's doing that. You get to the bottom, you give them direct suggestions spoken right to them, but it can be in third person. Like, he turned to me and he said, "You're a winner. You'll always be a winner, and we'll overcome every obstacle." And I got back in the car and we went and got the steaks and went looking for Dracula, whatever it is. So you zip the loops back up. The power of embedded loops, the power of multiple embedded loops, nested loops, is the stories themselves are the trance induction designed entirely to give the direct suggestion at the bottom, which slips past the critical faculty.
Right. Okay. So simplifying all of this, and if
that was the simple version.
You start at, even more simple. And if you want to learn this, check out the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy. You have a full lesson on this, and it's a really, really awesome thing to do. Plus, in the show notes, we should put the link to you giving the keynote at Hypnothoughts Live 2019, I believe was the year.
It was.
And you did that however many freaking loops you did. It was the whole keynote that you did was nested loops. But this is the simple version, is that you want to package a direct suggestion that you can deliver in a way that no one will suspect is directed at them, right? Direct. So that's why you were saying you could package it something like, "And that teacher gave me the best advice I ever heard. He said to me," direct.
And there's whatever the direct suggestion, yes.
So how do you do that? Well, you need them in a trance. Well, you get them in a trance by telling them stories that are interconnected in a way that causes some confusion. So they're focused on your stories. They're fixating their attention on the stories.
Drawing them down the loop.
Then by segueing from story A to story B, right? Because we were at that campfire, and campfires are a funny thing. I remember when I first built it, we're changing the story. We're getting what you said about stacking realities and referential indices. You are creating some confusion. I got confused just explaining that.
Right.
But you're creating some confusion, which causes people to try even harder and fail to keep track of what's going on, which gives you that opening to be able to do the direct suggestion.
Absolutely. And because
You keep looking at your watch.
Well, yeah, because we got to eat lunch.
We have another.
Well, let's just pause for a second. I want to show you this new laugh I'm working on.
Uh-oh,
And the
okay.
facial expression goes with it. Caruso really likes this. Watch. What do you think?
I think I just realized you're looking at your watch because we still have some stuff that we have to cover.
This is the stuff. Look at all the questions after the.
Oh my goodness! I didn't even know.
Well,
So
let's
do you
talk
wanna
more
say-
about nested loops. Scare
Do you want to do one more and then go to our commercial?
We're going to have to do that. So
Or should we go straight to it?
well, we better go straight to it because we are running out of time here.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's go to our commercial break and then we'll come back.
Tonight, on the Texas Schoolbook Depository Network, The Lawn Tree Blooms.
Terry Isted was a fairly normal man. He lived a normal life, although it was a life alone in Granby, Connecticut. One day, Terry gathered up his rake, lawnmower, and some bags for yard waste, and began tidying up the garden for the annual spring cleanup. Things were going well, until he attempted to slice out the thistles and weeds at the end of his property, only to have the heavy nylon slicing whip in his weed whipper break free, bifurcating his left testicle. Terry fell to the ground in agony, but couldn't call for help as his iPhone had been left in the house. Terry lay on the lawn, essentially paralyzed by the agonizing reflex arc that flashed through his genital cluster. But just before he lost consciousness from pain and shock, he saw an amazing sight. The lawn tree on his property had suddenly bloomed into pink flowers, and Terry knew that everything would be okay again, and his split testicle would be re-enfranchised with no ill effects whatsoever, because everything changes when the lawn tree blooms.
I looked out of my room.
He looked out of his room,
With my pet raccoon.
feeling like a baboon.
And the lawn tree blooms, and the lawn tree blooms, and the lawn tree blooms, and the lawn tree blooms.
Remember, boys and girls, everything changes when the lawn tree blooms.
The Lawn Tree Blooms tonight at 8:64 a.m. on the Jim Garrison Network.
And we're back. Let's ask another question. All right. What role does rapport play in the effectiveness of hypnotherapy and NLP interventions, and how can rapport be developed and maintained?
Wonderful question, Chris.
This is a big one.
Wonderful. Without rapport, you're basically screwed if you're trying to do therapy, because in the presence of rapport, where you have successfully entered the other person's model of the world, you can do near miraculous things. In the absence of rapport, you'll be banging your head on a frickin' wall.
In fact, this is such an important topic that it doesn't even apply. It does. I was going to say
It applies in other areas, yeah.
It doesn't even apply to only hypnosis. What I meant to say is it applies to freaking everything. Every interaction that you have with another person is going to depend upon rapport. Even pets. Like if my dog knows that I'm irritated at him because he did something bad, right? There's no rapport there for a period of time.
Well, yeah, remember, the whole point of rapport, if you're new to this, is when people are in rapport, they move the same, they talk the same, they speak at the same speed, and there's gang members not far from my neighborhood. Well, far enough away that it's not a consideration, but you can see them stand on the corner and the gestures and everything, the front and up there. And one guy, you can tell who the leader is because he's the one they're all matching and mirroring. They're copying his posture and his attitude and so on. And I got a very good contract working with a company, Jumbo Video, that doesn't exist anymore. And the way I did this was building rapport with the head honcho in the boardroom. He slumped, I slumped. He talked slowly, I talked slowly. He gestured like this, I gestured like that. He liked me, booked me. The rest was history. Rapport means you're in that psychodynamic loop with the person.
That's another one of these cause-effect loops, right? You can create the rapport on purpose with the mirroring and matching.
Yeah.
Or rapport can just happen naturally, which is what happens.
And you'll
to
be
most
mirroring
people.
and matching.
And you'll end up mirroring and matching and end up sitting the same way, breathing at the same rate, talking at similar volumes. You get excited. Everyone starts talking really loud. Right.
Remember, though, and we'll leave you with this. I learned this from John Grinder, and it's amazing. You can match and mirror the person. You can tap when they breathe. You can speak in the same rate as them. You can offer their language back like Erickson did. Or you can simply pretend that the person you're engaging with in that psychodynamic loop is the most fascinating, important human being you have ever met in your life. Keep pretending that, and your mirror neurons will do the rest, and you'll build immense rapport super fast.
I literally did that last night. I was hanging out.
As opposed to figuratively?
I was hanging out with a bunch of people, and in one particular case, I didn't feel the social connection. And I thought, oh, this is a good idea right now. I can simply take on that attitude of this person here talking to me is the most fascinating person in the world and act as if it's true. And it completely changed things for me in that moment.
That's not bad at all. Yeah.
Really cool.
It works very, very well.
How does this apply, of course, when it comes to hypnotherapy, NLP, etc.? Well, obviously, without rapport, you screw yourself. You shoot yourself in the foot. You screw yourself up.
Many times.
With rapport, it almost doesn't even matter, what hypnotic induction you do. Who cares? What intervention do you do? Again,
who cares?
Who cares? Provided you had the right insight and the right information, trust your intuition, calibration, etc., you can almost do anything, and you can help people.
Excellent. Excellent. In fact, that's so accident.
That is so accidental.
That's so excellent that we're now going to put a lid on this podcast.
All right.
We're running
it's a
out of
short
time.
one. Yeah.
Short one today. Fact, as I was rushing through this, we get a lot done this week. We had 2 meetings, 2 training things.
Oh, my goodness.
And I wrote the empowering question, but clearly deleted half of it. So I'm going to do the empowering question today. We're not going to ask this gentleman to do it because it wouldn't be fair. He always delivers them, and they're always good ones.
I want to do it the way you wrote it.
Okay. I was going to do it.
Just for the fun of it.
Let's do it. Chris, okay. I'll set you up. So, and after this, we're out of here. Here's our empowering question for today. Chris,
ask yourself, what have I been putting... Here, you can fill in the blank now.
Thanks again. This is Being Brain Software, and you can see we're losing the thread.
Give us a real empowering question.
Well, we've looked at a number of things about hypnosis. So here's your empowering question. Ask yourself, which rapport skills will I apply? Who will I build rapport with this week? How will I notice hypnosis around me? And what idiomotor signals will I see when I begin looking at them starting now?
That's right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. This has been episode 253 of the Brain Software Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to it in your mobile app, whatever you're using to check out podcasts, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks again, and good night. Terry lay on the lawn, essentially paralyzed by the agonizing reflex arc that flashed through his genital cluster. Just before he lost consciousness from pain and shock.
Say that line again. Ross, you're putting the lawn tree music over this. Ross.
And Terry knew that everything would be okay again, and his split testicle would be... you got us trying to hold it together.
Come on, back to the lawn tree.
Oh, my goodness. The lawn tree on his property had suddenly bloomed into pink flowers, and Terry knew that everything would be okay again. And his split testicle...